All right, everybody. Today is the day we talk about if statements, conditional statements, the ability to essentially make decisions in a program. Now, every programming language has to have some form of decision making. This is one of those basic building blocks that is pretty much built into every programming language imaginable. So, the idea of making decisions, to give you some real world examples, let's go with the thermostat example. If you set the air conditioner to 75 degrees, for example, and that temperature happens to be higher. If the temperature is higher than 75, what happens? The air conditioner turns on. If it is lower than 75, the air conditioner would turn off, right? So basically, the air conditioner makes a decision on when to turn on, when to turn off. Same would be true for a heater. You could apply that logic to, if the light is green, go. Otherwise, if the light is red, stop. That sort of thing. And this logic applies to games and other places as well. You have to have an if statement pretty much in any program that you write. There has to be some decisions made somewhere. If you have the key to the door opens. If you don't, then it might display a message saying the door is locked or you don't have the key. If a certain event has occurred or you've said a certain thing, something happens in the game, or the person you're talking to says something different. That sort of thing. That's where all these decisions exist. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new project. And this time, instead of making a Windows form app, I'm going to make a console application, just so we have something a little different this time. Now if you're using, again, 2017, it's laid out a little differently. I think most of it's all done in one window, like the name and stuff. I have 2019 here, so the name's going to occur on the next screen, but we're going to do a console app, and then we're going to do a Windows form app. So I can show you both ways where you can see the if statements at play. Now up to this point, we've done just the forms and buttons and text boxes. But there's a whole behind-the-scenes programming stuff. There's a whole behind-the-scenes programming that goes on. A lot of the code and stuff, you don't need a form for some of it. In fact, some projects, you're just coding back-end stuff, pulling from databases, storing information, moving it back and forth. It doesn't require there to be a GUI component. So we're going to do that first, just to show you how if statements work. And then we'll move on and pull up a form and show how it would work with that. So I'm just going to call this intro ifs. Again, you can feel free to put the date, for example, but that's usually how I name things. Put the date in front of it. I'm on my home computer, so I'm not going to bother with that. I'm also going to turn on my trusty magnifier so I can zoom in and I can see what's going on. So, let's go ahead and hit next, and we'll leave it current. Again, if you have 2017, this is a little different, but or any older version. Alright, so your basic default program, console, you'll note doesn't show any form of any sort, just shows some code. And it already has console.writeLine, which is the code to write things onto the command prompt. Now, if I were to run this, I'm going to hit the play button just above the screen here. You'll see something similar to this pop up. Now, and as usual, my computer says that it's safe. That's great. Alright, well look, there's Hello World. And notice, I think this may be unique to 2019 version, but I know if you have a 2017 version, this window will just pop up and go away immediately because it's executed, the code is done. I just type anything, it goes away. So we're going to have to add a little thing there for anyone who is using the older version. Well, I'm just going to erase this line here. Give myself a little bit of space. Now, I'm going to just make a simple variable, dim in as integer. And we'll just make it in equals 0, let's say. And there's my Java training coming back with semicolons. All right, so I'm just going to write a simple if statement. So if is the start of it, and I'm going to say n equals 0. So if n equals 0, then, and as soon as I press enter, you'll see that it puts this end if at the bottom. And I'm going to just write this to the screen, console.writeLine. It is 0. Simple and straightforward. Now, basically what this means is this is all one block of code, and I can have multiple lines of code in here that run and do things if I want. But if n is 0, it runs whatever code is between these two highlighted places here, the then and the end if. So you'll see, oh, if it's 0, well, it is 0. So if I run this, it should put on the screen, it is 0. And certainly it does. I can just press something and that'll go away. Now, if by chance you're using the older version, that may just pop up and immediately go away, so you won't even, it'll be so fast you don't even see it. If that is the case, you can do console.readline. And what this will do, and I could put a little console.writeLine as well above that to press anything and hit enter. So if I do this and run it, your screen should pause. Press anything, hit enter, like so. I don't need to do that on the 2019 version, but if you're using the 2017 version, you'll probably need this code to make sure that window doesn't just vanish. I'm going to comment these out with the little apostrophe here, because I don't need them for this one. But if you do, leave those in there. Now, this is a single if. I could write another if n equals 1, then, console writeLine, it is 1. And if I do another if, if, these would be two separate questions. So I would ask this question first, and if it is true, and this, if n equals 0 basically is either going to be true or false. If it's true, then this code runs. If it's false, it ignores that and goes to the next workable code. But there are times where you want to, have maybe 3 or 4 choices and you only want to pick one of them. If I make these all separate, then it is not impossible that every single one of them could run. Maybe I do some stuff in here that changes the value of n. It becomes 1. The next if runs. The next if runs. And if I only want one of them to run out of the 3 or 4 things that I have choices for, then I'm going to have to do something a little different. So I'm going to rewrite this a little bit, and I'm going to, let's say we have choices if n is 0, if n is 1, or if it's anything else. So if n equals 0, I'll just do that same thing I did again, then console.writeLine. And the nice thing about this, it capitalizes them where they're supposed to be capitalized for you. So it is 0. Now I'm going to press enter here and move this end if down a little bit. And we're going to add to this. You can have if. And if you want other conditions, you can say else if. Else if n equals 1, then. And this is a second statement, basically. Console.writeLine. It is 1. Like so. And I'm going to have one more here, else. And this is simply going to be it certainly is something else. Like so. So now I have, and if I click on it, you see they all light up. I have 3 possibilities here. 1, if it's 0, it's going to do this. And then it's going to basically just go to the end if. So it's going to pick one of these choices and end. Now if it's 1, it will go here, pick this choice. If it's not 0, not 1, but anything else, any other number, it goes here. So any other number goes here. So -1, -5, 1,000,009,001. Everything else would go here. Now I can have as many of these as I want. I could have else if n equals 2, else if n equals 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. So you can make this fairly lengthy. But this gives us choices in a program. Like if I were to, select male or female on a chart, it gives me different questions because of that. Well, if you pick male, load up these questions. If you pick female, load up these questions. That sort of thing. So if I run this, if it's 0, I should get 2 it is zeros. So let's hit it and see. Well, it is 0. If I come up here and change this to any other number, really, 9,001. I run it. It certainly is something else. It went to that else because it was a different number. So this is how you would do kind of consoles, background stuff. And you will see more of this as we move on with the class. Because programming is a huge part of a programming class. It's not all pictures and GUIs and graphics. Some stuff has to be done in the background to control what everything else does, what happens in the program. Well, now that we've kind of seen how this works up close, let's see how it would work if we made a GUI with simple box, simple label. You click a button and it checks to see what you've written in. So we'll make another project. New project. And this time I'm going to use the Windows format instead of the console. So, boop. And I'll just call this GUI ifs. And you can put date, whatever you want on that. And I will zoom out because I have lost my screen a little bit. There we go. Next. Next. And voila. So I'm going to just drag a couple of things on this form when it finally pops up. A simple button to click on. A simple text box. And a label. So text box, line that up there, and a label over here. So what's going to happen here is when I type in the text box, I'm going to click the button. It's going to check to see what I typed in, and the label will change based on that. We're going to use some if statements to make some adjustments here. Before I do that, I should probably name everything. My text box should probably be named something useful. Oh, I'm scrolling off my screen here. Alright, let's see here. So text box, I am clicked on. Let's go down, find the name. TXT as the heading. I'm just going to call it input. My label, that's going to be the output, so I'll just call it label output. And just put the text. It doesn't really matter. Label goes for. Alright, there we go. And my button will be my clicky button. So I will just say, click here. And the name will just be button click. Fairly simple and straightforward. I probably should call it something like a button check or something, but that's fine for now. Button check, button click. So click here, type something in the text box, and my label will change. So I'm just going to double click on my button. Boop. It brings open the basic method, or the basic function. When I click on this button, this is the code it's going to run. That's what happens when you double click that. So I'm going to just simply make a quick variable. Let's decide what we're going to use. We did integers earlier. Let's go with strings this time. I'm going to type in the actual word 1, the actual word 2, which is pretty much the same thing but with strings this time. So dim in equals, dim in as string, and in equals text input dot text. So I'm just going to take that value. Now I could directly compare in the if statement probably, the text input dot text, but I kind of like plugging it into a variable first. It just feels a little bit more stable. Because I took that value, I plugged it somewhere, and I could use that in as my kind of medium, I guess you can say. If in equals, and quotes 1, then we do something. Now I could just say instead of in, I probably could just say text input dot text, and that would be fine. This is actually probably like an extra step, but I'm going to go ahead and do that because I will have to have text input dot text for every single if that I do after the fact, so I don't really want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and say else if enter else. Yep. Else, and I have to have a condition here. In equals 2. Then. Alright, there we go. We got it. So if it's 1, I'm going to change that label. So I got an if, in is 1, change the label to whatever text I want. If it's 2, change the label to this. If it's something other than 1 or 2, we're going to plug in whatever value we're going to do here. So label output dot text equals I'm number 1. Alright, we'll do the same thing here. Label output dot text equals who does number 2 work for? And last but not least, label output dot text. And we just need to say something else. It's not 1, it's not 2. Fuzzy pickles. There we go. So what should happen when we run this program, my window should pop up, and hopefully my virus scanner does not determine that it is a virus or something. Then we have our button, we have our text box. I type something into the text box. I click the button. If it is 1, this is what the label is going to change to. If it's 2, this is what the label is going to change to. If it's 3, 4, 5, any other word or anything, that's what the label is going to change to. So we do a quick run. And, well, don't know why you think my thing is suspicious, but could you stop it? Alright, then this thing will probably disappear and come back in a second. Yes, I know. I don't know why it does that. But my file looks safe. I'm reassured that the program I wrote is safe. So, you all should be reassured as well. So if I type in 1 and I click this, my label is going to change. If I type in 2, my label will change. If I type in 3 or something else, my label changes. Now, quick question. What if I caps all 2? Fuzzy pickle. 1, capital 1. Now notice it did not run this, and that's because capital letters and lowercase letters are different. When we're dealing with text, lowercase, capital letters are not the same thing. And if you think about it, the major reason for that is when you name stuff, when you're using things for variables, if capital letter and lowercase were treated as the same, you'd have, what, 26, there we go. You'd have 26 letters, and of course the numbers and symbols, 10 numbers and whatever symbols on the ASCII table. If you include capital letters, you double the number of letters you have available to name things, which gives you a lot more variety, a lot more things. But also, since it's case sensitive, think of it kind of like a password. if I type in my password with capital letters accidentally, how many people have done that? It says it's wrong, even though the word itself is the same, the case of the letters are not. So this has to be lowercase in order for that to work. Click here on number 1. And that's essentially your foray into if statements here. So now we've seen kind of how they work in the background, how they can work with GUIs. Going forward, we will of course talk about nested ifs, compound ifs, and other things, where we can check multiple different things at once. Or maybe we have to check like a series of things for something to happen. It can get fairly complex, but this is one of the basic building blocks of any programming language. So, as usual, if you have any questions or comments, let me know. But this is if statements.